Have you ever sat in your room, completely fine on the outside, and someone asked you, "What's wrong?" and you genuinely didn't know how to answer? Not because nothing was wrong, but because you couldn't find the feeling. You searched for it. You waited for it to show up with a name. Sad, angry, tired, anything. And instead, you just got static. That's a strange kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being without people, the loneliness of being without yourself. And here's the part that might surprise you. This isn't a personality flaw. It's not you being closed off or too logical or just not an emotional person. Something else is going on. And once you see it, you'll probably recognize it in yourself immediately. That's literally me, you might be thinking right now. If so, stay with me. Because by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why this happens. And more importantly, you're going to feel a lot less broken about it. Let's start with the concept itself. Psychologists have a name for this experience. They call it alexithymia, the difficulty identifying and describing your own emotions. But forget the clinical word for a second. Here's what it actually feels like. It's like someone hands you a locked box and tells you there's something valuable inside. You know it's there. You can feel the weight of it, but you don't have the key, and you can't see through the walls. You're not empty. You're just locked out of your own house. Here's where it gets surprising, though. This isn't usually because people don't feel things. Most people who struggle with this feel plenty, sometimes too much. The problem isn't the feeling itself. It's the translation. Somewhere between the emotion happening in your body and the emotion arriving in your conscious mind, the signal gets scrambled. Think of it like a radio station playing behind a wall of static. The music is there. It's just distorted enough that you can't make out the song. So why does the static happen? For a lot of people, it starts early. Maybe you grew up in a home where emotions weren't really welcome. Not necessarily an abusive home, sometimes just a practical one. A home where "I'm fine" was the expected answer. Where crying got you a "stop being dramatic." Where anger got shut down before it could even be explained. When that happens enough times, your brain does something incredibly smart. It learns that feelings are inconvenient, risky even. So instead of stopping the feelings altogether, which it can't actually do, it starts turning down the volume on your awareness of them. You don't lose the emotion, you lose the notification. Maybe you're not numb. Maybe you never learned the language your own body was speaking. That reframe matters more than it sounds like it does, because "I don't feel anything" and "I was never taught to translate what I feel" are two completely different stories. One says something is wrong with you. The other says something happened to you, and it can be unlearned. But there's another layer here, and this is the part most people never talk about. Sometimes the fog isn't from childhood. Sometimes it's a survival response you built yourself, recently, without even noticing. Think about the last time you were overwhelmed. Deadlines stacking up, relationship stress, too many decisions, too little sleep. What did your mind do? For a lot of people, the mind doesn't collapse under that pressure. It goes quiet instead. It floats slightly above the moment, like it's watching your life happen through glass. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a mild dissociative response, your brain's way of protecting you from being flooded. It's not weakness. It's actually kind of brilliant if you think about it. Your mind essentially said, "If I let you feel all of this at once, it might break you. So I'm going to mute it until you're safe enough to process it." The problem is, most of us never come back to process it. We just keep living in the muted version. Here's the twist most people don't expect. The fact that you can't name what you're feeling doesn't mean you're not feeling it. It usually shows up somewhere else instead, in your body, in your patterns. Maybe it's the tight chest you get for no obvious reason. Maybe it's the way you suddenly feel exhausted the moment you have free time. Maybe it's snapping at someone small when the real target was something much bigger, something you never let yourself look at directly. Your emotions didn't disappear. They just changed their exit. And this is why some people scroll for hours without knowing why they can't stop, or eat when they're not hungry, or pick a fight over something tiny. It's not random. It's an emotion trying to leave the body through the only door it could find. Now, it's worth saying, this isn't always something to fix. Sometimes a little emotional distance is healthy. It helps you function during a crisis. It helps you stay calm when calm is exactly what's needed. The goal isn't to feel everything all the time at full volume. The goal is choice, being able to access the feeling when you need to and set it down when you don't. The problem is only when the door stays locked permanently, when you can't find your way back in even when you want to, when you look at your own life and realize you've been narrating it instead of living it. So how do you start finding the key? It usually doesn't start with a big dramatic breakthrough. It starts small, physically even, noticing where tension sits in your body before you can name what caused it. Asking yourself, not what am I feeling, but where in my body do I feel something right now? That question is often easier to answer, and it becomes a doorway to the harder one. It also starts with slowing down enough to let the signal catch up. In a world of constant noise, notifications, deadlines, comparison, your nervous system rarely gets quiet enough to hear its own messages. Give it 5 quiet minutes, and sometimes the feeling you've been missing all day finally arrives. Late, but honest. And it starts with self-compassion instead of self-judgment. Not, why can't I just feel normal like everyone else? But of course this happened. My mind was protecting me the only way it knew how. That shift changes everything. Because shame keeps the door locked. Curiosity is what opens it. If any of this sounds like you, if you've ever gone quiet inside and couldn't explain why, if you've ever been asked, how do you feel, and genuinely had no answer, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not cold. You are not someone incapable of depth. You are someone who learned, at some point, that it was safer not to know. And what was learned can always be relearned. The feelings are still in there. They didn't leave. They're just waiting for you to build a door they trust enough to walk through. If this sounded like you, I'd really like to know. What's one moment you can remember going quiet inside instead of feeling something fully? Tell me in the comments. Sometimes just writing it down is the first step back in. If you learned something about yourself watching this, consider subscribing, because this channel exists for exactly this, for the parts of you that never quite had the words. And if you're the kind of person who felt this one a little too closely, there's another side to this story I haven't told you yet. One about what happens when the feelings finally do come back, all at once. That's next.